Hi, I'm Elena. At my cousin's graduation dinner, I brought homemade pastries and genuine congratulations. He brought up my useless liberal arts degree, and the family erupted in laughter. My father shook his head. My mother studied her plate. My aunt whispered to her husband just loud enough for me to hear. Such a shame. She was always the smart one. No one defended me except my 9-year-old niece who offered me the last breadstick. But before you think this is just another story of the overlooked academic black sheep, ask yourself, what if the degree they ridiculed became the foundation of a $500 million acquisition? What if the wasted potential they dismissed over Sunday dinners turned out to be the visionary they'd soon be desperately trying to access? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Let's talk about what happened before the day my phone exploded with calls from family members who couldn't remember my birthday 3 years running, but somehow all remembered my number when the news broke. The summer heat in Austin was unforgiving, as I parked my weathered Honda Civic outside my parents' suburban home. The kind of heat that makes promises to your skin it never intends to keep. Like maybe it'll cool down after sunset. But it never does. The street was lined with familiar cars. My brother Marco's shiny Audi SUV, my cousin Devin's BMW, my Aunt Sophia's Mercedes. My car looked like it had taken a wrong turn and ended up on the wrong street entirely. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. I'd tried, I really had. My curly hair was tamed into something presentable, my one good blouse ironed, minimal makeup applied with care. Not for them, but for me. A thin layer of armor against what I knew was coming. Devin had just graduated with his MBA from Wharton, the family golden child, the one who had done it right. The celebration dinner was in full swing by the time I arrived, 15 minutes late because my neighborhood had flooded again, and the detour added extra time I hadn't planned for. "Well, look who finally made it," my mother called out as I stepped through the door, her tone dancing on the edge between teasing and genuine disapproval. We were about to send out a search party. "Sorry," I said, placing the pastry box on the counter. "Flooding on Riverside." "You really should move out of that neighborhood," my father said, without looking up from the grill in the backyard. "It's not safe, and this happens every summer." I didn't mention that my rent was what I could afford while bootstrapping my company. They'd stopped asking about my little project months ago when it became clear I wasn't going to come to my senses and apply for what they called a real job. My brother Marco appeared in the doorway, cocktail in hand. The prodigal daughter returns. How's the world of... He paused dramatically. What was it again? Digital humanities? Computational linguistics, I corrected, though I knew the distinction was meaningless to him. "It's going well, actually." He smirked. "Still, trying to make computers understand poetry or whatever?" "Something like that," I replied, not bothering to explain the natural language processing algorithms I'd been refining for the past 3 years, the ones that major tech companies had started taking very serious interest in. The dining room was set with my mother's best china, the set that only appeared for special occasions and important guests. Place cards in calligraphy marked each seat. Mine was at the far end, squeezed between my 7-year-old nephew and the edge of the table where the wobble was worst. Devin sat at the center, next to my father. His graduation photos formed a shrine on the sideboard, cap and gown, diploma, in hand, business school pennant visible in each carefully arranged frame. "Elena, there you are." Devin waved from his throne at the center of the table. "I was just telling everyone about the job offers. 3 of them now. The one from Goldman is looking most promising." "That's great," I said, and I meant it. Devin had always been kind to me, even if he didn't understand my choices. "Congratulations." "We're all so proud," my Aunt Sophia gushed, patting his arm. "A real career path. Security. Benefits. This is what education is supposed to do for you. I felt the familiar weight settling in my chest. The unspoken comparison hung in the air like the scent of my father's famous barbecue sauce. Sweet, on the surface but with a sharp vinegar bite underneath. Dinner progressed as these family gatherings always did. Updates on promotions, house purchases, engagement announcements. The milestones of success as defined by the Santiago family playbook. I pushed food around my plate and nodded at appropriate intervals. Then came the toast. My father stood, glass raised. To Devin, who makes this family proud. Harvard undergrad, Wharton MBA, and now the business world is his oyster. This is what happens when you make smart choices and follow the right path. Glasses clinked. I raised mine too, genuinely happy for my cousin while the barb about smart choices lodged somewhere between my ribs. That's when my Uncle Ricardo turned to me. So, Elena, when are you going to use that brain of yours for something practical? Wasn't the plan to get a real degree after experimenting with that liberal arts stuff? I took a slow sip of water. My degree is real, actually, and I'm using it every day in my work. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Work, my aunt, Sophia repeated with a laugh. Is that what we're calling it now? Sitting in coffee shops typing all day? My mother jumped in. Elena has always been creative. She marches to her own drummer. The way she said creative made it sound like a disease I'd contracted despite their best preventative efforts. I'm building a company, I said quietly. We're developing language analysis tools that help computers better understand human communication nuances. Like Siri? My nephew asked, suddenly interested. I smiled at him. Sort of, but much more sophisticated. Teaching AI to understand context, emotion, and cultural references in text. But no actual income yet, my father stated, rather than asked. It wasn't a question because he already knew the answer. Or thought he did. We're pre-revenue, I explained, using the startup term that would mean nothing to them. But we've had significant interest from pre-revenue, my brother interrupted with a laugh. That's a fancy way of saying unemployed. The table erupted in laughter. Not cruel laughter necessarily. More the kind that comes from people who are so certain of their worldview that anything outside it becomes absurd by definition. Remember, when Elena could have gone to Stanford for computer science. My mother said to no one in particular. Full scholarship, too. Instead, she went for that. What was it again? Comparative literature and linguistics. At that liberal arts college nobody's heard of, my father added. Reed College has an excellent reputation, I said, the defense automatic after years of the same conversation. And I double majored in computer science. Such a waste, my aunt sighed. All that potential. Not everyone needs to follow the same path, I said, trying to keep my voice even. True, my father conceded, but most paths should lead somewhere. More laughter, softer this time, but no less dismissive. We worry about you, honey, my mother said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. 32 years old and still. Experimenting. Your brother had made junior partner by your age. Devin has 3 job offers from top firms. We just want security for you. I looked around the table at my family. Successful, conventional, and utterly certain they knew exactly how life should be navigated. They loved me. I knew that. They just couldn't see beyond the narrow definition of success they'd constructed. Pass the potatoes, please, I said, because there was no point in explaining again. Later, as dessert was being served, including the pastries I'd brought, which my mother had transferred to her own serving dish, removing any evidence that I'd contributed something of value, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Sarah, my business partner and CTO. The text was simple. They're ready to talk numbers. Big ones. Call me ASAP. I felt a flutter in my chest but kept my expression neutral. 3 years of work, of ramen noodle dinners and shared office space with 6 other startups, of coding until 4 a.m. and explaining my vision to venture capitalists who looked right through me. It was finally happening. Elena, are you listening? My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. Devin was asking about your apartment situation. I looked up to find the entire family watching me. Sorry. What about it? I was saying, Devin explained patiently, that I know someone in commercial real estate. Maybe they could help you find something in a better neighborhood, one that doesn't flood every time it rains. That's thoughtful, I managed, but I'm fine where I am for now. Stubborn, my father muttered. Always so stubborn. Independent, I corrected softly. I've always been independent. My Aunt Sophia shook her head. There's independent, and then there's foolish, dear. Pride won't keep you warm or fed. I stood abruptly. I need some air. Outside on the patio, the night had barely cooled the relentless Texas heat. I sat on the steps, phone in hand, staring at Sarah's message. Across the yard, fireflies blinked like distant stars. Here, then gone, then here again. Persistent little lights refusing to stay extinguished. I thought about the algorithm we'd created, the one everyone said couldn't work. How we'd refined it over and over, testing and failing and testing again. How we'd been laughed out of investor meetings and told our approach was too theoretical, too academic, not practical enough for the market. The same things my family said about me. Behind me, the screen door creaked. My niece, Lucia, stepped out holding 2 cookies. I saved you. The chocolate one, she said, holding it out. They're saying weird things about you in there. I took the cookie with a genuine smile. What kind of weird things? She shrugged, sitting beside me. Grown-up stuff, about wasted potential and intervention. Uncle Marco said maybe they should stop enabling you. She looked up at me with solemn 9-year-old eyes. What does enabling mean? It means they think they're making it too easy for me to make bad choices, I explained. She considered this while chewing her cookie. Are they bad choices if they make you happy? From the mouths of babes. That's a very good question, Lucia. I think you're smart, she declared. Dad says you're the smartest one in the family, but that smart doesn't always mean sensible. I laughed despite myself. Your dad might be right about that. What are you doing on your phone? Is it your robot language stuff? Something like that, I said. A big company might want to buy the robot language stuff. Her eyes widened. For how much? I don't know yet, but maybe a lot. She nodded sagely. Then you can buy a house that doesn't flood. Maybe, I agreed. Will you still make cookies if you're rich? These are good. She held up the half-eaten evidence. I will always make cookies, I promised. The screen door opened again, spilling light and voices onto the patio. My brother Marco appeared, looking vaguely annoyed. There you are. Mom's serving coffee and wants to know if you're having some or continuing to sulk out here. I'm not sulking, I said. Come on, Lucia. Grandma saved some ice cream for you, he said to his daughter, who jumped up excitedly. She paused at the door. Don't let them enable you, Aunt Elena, she stage whispered, then disappeared inside. Marco raised an eyebrow. Teaching my kid vocabulary now? She's smart. She picks things up. He hesitated, then sat in the space Lucia had vacated. Look, we're all just concerned. You had so much potential. Had? I challenged. Past tense? You know what I mean. Stanford wanted you. You could have been at Google or Apple by now. Maybe I didn't want that life. He sighed. What do you want then? Really? Because from where we're all sitting, it looks like you're just drifting. I looked at my phone again, at Sarah's message. I want to build something meaningful. something that changes how we interact with technology, something that's mine. Noble, he said, not unkindly. But reality eventually catches up, sis. You need health insurance, retirement savings, a house that isn't in a flood zone. I know what I'm doing, Marco. Do you? Because Dad's about to offer you a job at his firm. Again. And Mom's going to back him up. And frankly, you could do worse than corporate law for a safety net while you figure things out. My phone buzzed again. Sarah. They're talking acquisition, not partnership. Whole thing. Call me. I stood up. I have to make a call. Elena, come on. Don't walk away from this conversation again. It's important, I insisted. Work important. He threw up his hands. Fine. But they're not going to let this go. They've been planning this intervention dinner for weeks. The Devon celebration is just the sugar to help the medicine go down. I froze. Intervention? Poor word choice. He backpedaled. Family concern expression. Whatever you want to call it. Wow, I said softly. They really think I'm that much of a failure. Something like guilt flashed across his face. Not a failure, just at a crossroads. And they want to help you take the right path. I'm taking my path, I said firmly, and I really do need to make this call. I walked to my car, slipped inside, and called Sarah with shaking hands. Finally, she answered on the first ring. Where have you been? This is happening, Elena. It's really happening. Slow down, I said, though my heart was racing. Tell me everything. Metroform wants the whole company, not just the technology. They want us to lead a new division. They're talking $500 million, Elena. $500 million. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. That can't be right. I've been on with their CEO for the last hour. It's real. They're sending the official offer tomorrow. We did it. Through the windshield, I could see my family through the dining room window. My father gesturing emphatically. My mother nodding along. My brother returning to report his failed mission to bring me back inside. All of them so certain they knew what was best for me. None of them having the slightest idea that the company I'd built from my worthless degree was about to be acquired for more money than all their sensible careers would generate in a lifetime. Elena, are you still there? Sarah's voice pulled me back. I'm here, I said quietly. I'm just processing. Should I open the champagne we've been saving? The one for when we make it? I looked again at my family, then down at my phone where the impossible number still burned in my vision. 500 million. Not yet, I decided. I have a family dinner to finish first. Are you kidding me right now? This is the moment, Elena. I know, I said, and I want to savor it, all of it. I'll call you back in an hour. I ended the call and sat in my car, letting the reality wash over me. Everything was about to change. My life, my future, my family's perception of me. The thought was dizzying. Have you ever held life-changing news in your hands and realized that the moment of revelation would be almost as significant as the news itself? Have you ever wanted to make that moment perfect, to script it just so, not out of cruelty or revenge, but simply to ensure that the years of dismissal and doubt would never be forgotten, by them or by you? I took a deep breath and returned to the house, walking into a conversation that abruptly halted when I appeared. Everything okay? My mother asked, a bit too brightly. Fine, I said, accepting the coffee she offered. Just a work call. My father cleared his throat. Speaking of work, Elena, your mother and I have been talking. I have an opening at the firm, paralegal position, good benefits, room for growth. It would give you some stability while you figure things out. I smiled politely. That's very thoughtful, but I'm committed to my company. Honey, my mother said gently, It's been 3 years. At some point, you have to face reality. I am facing reality, I replied. Every day. The reality, my Aunt Sophia interjected, is that you're barely making ends meet pursuing some academic fantasy while your peers are building real lives. I looked around the table at their concerned faces. They truly believed they were trying to save me from myself. Did you know, I said conversationally, that the field of computational linguistics is projected to grow by over 300% in the next decade? My father sighed. Elena, please. This isn't about market projections. This is about you having a stable future. Did you also know, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, that the algorithm my team and I developed can analyze emotional nuance in text with 96% accuracy? That's nearly 30% better than anything currently on the market. Devin, to his credit, looked genuinely interested. That's actually impressive. What's the practical application? Everything from customer service to national security, I explained. Any situation where understanding the emotional context of communication matters. That does sound promising, Devin admitted. Have you had any investor interest? My mother shot him a look that clearly said he wasn't helping. Some, I said vaguely. We've been in talks. Talks aren't contracts, my father pointed out. And ideas aren't income. I nodded slowly. You're right about that. So you'll consider the paralegal position? He pressed, hope rising in his voice. I met his gaze directly. No? But thank you for the offer. His face fell. My mother's lips thinned to a disappointed line. I think, I said carefully, that I've found my path. It's just not one you recognize yet. Yet? My brother repeated skeptically. Yet, I confirmed. The conversation moved on, back to Devin's job prospects and my cousin Alicia's upcoming wedding. I sat quietly, sipping my coffee, watching them all navigate the familiar waters of family dynamics and approved life choices. As the evening wound down, I helped my mother clear the dishes. In the kitchen, away from the others, she turned to me with genuine concern in her eyes. We just want you to be okay, Elena. To be secure. I know, Mom, and I am okay. More than okay. She studied my face. You've always been so stubborn, so convinced you know better than everyone else. Not better, I corrected. Just different. I see different possibilities. And where have these possibilities gotten you? A flooded apartment and what? Hope? Hope doesn't pay bills. I placed the last dish in the dishwasher and turned to face her fully. Do you remember when I was 10 and I told you I wanted to learn how language works? Not just Spanish and English, but language itself? She smiled despite herself. You checked out so many books from the library they had to create a special limit just for you. And remember when I taught myself basic coding at 13? How I used to stay up all night trying to make programs that could understand puns. You were always peculiar that way, she admitted. So intensely focused on these niche interests. They weren't niche to me, I said softly. They were connections I saw that other people missed. Between words and meaning, between language and logic, between human communication and machine learning. She sighed, patting my arm. I know you think we don't understand you, Elena, but we understand enough to know when someone is struggling, when someone needs help finding their way. What if I'm not lost, Mom? What if I've been on my way all along and you just couldn't see the road I was taking? Before she could answer, my phone rang. Sarah again. I checked the screen and sighed. I need to take this. It's work. My mother nodded in resignation. Of course it is. I stepped onto the back patio again. This, time alone under the vast Texas sky. Sarah, I told you I'd call back. They sent the official letter of intent early, she interrupted, her voice pitched with excitement. It's real, Elena. It's happening. 500 million, with 100 million upfront and the rest tied to performance metrics over 3 years, plus leadership positions for both of us heading the new AI linguistics division. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of it settle over me. All the nights coding until my vision blurred. All the investor meetings where men in expensive suits looked through me rather than at me. All the family dinners just like tonight, where my choices were treated as temporary detours on the way to eventual surrender to convention. "Are you crying?" Sarah asked, because I'm definitely crying. I realized there were indeed tears on my cheeks. Happy tears, I assured her. "We did it. We absolutely fucking did it," she agreed. "So, can I open the champagne now?" Through the kitchen window, I could see my family gathering their things, preparing to leave. My mother handing out leftovers in neatly packed containers. My father checking his watch impatiently. My brother helping his sleepy children into their jackets. None of them having any idea that their world, and mine, had just fundamentally changed. "Not yet," I told Sarah. "Save it for tomorrow. We'll celebrate properly." "You're killing me," she groaned. "But fine. Tomorrow. First thing." I ended the call and took one more moment alone in the dark, savoring the last few minutes of being Elena, the family disappointment with the impractical degree and the foolish dreams. By this time tomorrow, I would be Elena, the success story. Elena, the visionary. Elena, who they'd suddenly always believed in. Or so they would claim. Have you ever stood at the threshold of vindication and realized that the victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in having been right all along? That the real triumph isn't the moment they finally see your worth, but all the moments you continued to see it when no one else did? I slipped back inside, letting the screen door close, softly behind me. The news still felt unreal, like a dream I might wake from at any moment. $500 million. More money than I could conceptualize. Enough to change not just my life, but the lives of everyone at our small company. Enough to validate every all-nighter, every rejection, every moment of doubt. "There you are," my father said, car keys already in hand. "We're heading out." The living room had that particular energy of a family gathering winding down. Coats being collected, leftovers distributed, goodbyes exchanged in the familiar choreography of departure. "Drive safely," I said automatically. My Aunt Sophia approached, purse clutched against her chest. "Think about what your father said, Elena. It's never too late to course correct." I nodded politely. "I'll keep that in mind." One by one, they filed out with hugs and cheek kisses and well-meaning advice. Devin was last, lingering in the doorway. "Hey," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, your work sounds fascinating. I'd love to hear more about it sometime." A small olive branch. "Thanks, Devin, and congratulations again on graduation." He smiled. "Maybe we're both just getting started, huh?" If only he knew how right he was. After everyone left, I helped my parents clean up the last of the dinner mess. The rhythm was familiar. My mother washing, my father drying, me putting things away, like we were characters reprising roles we'd played 1,000 times before. "You were quiet tonight," my mother observed, handing me a serving platter to return to the high cabinet. "Just tired," I replied. "It's been a long week." My father exchanged a look with my mother, that silent communication of long-married couples. "If it's money, Elena, you know you can always—" "It's not money," I interrupted gently. "Really? Not anymore, at least." "Well, think about the paralegal position," he pressed. "No pressure, but the opening won't last forever." I placed the platter in the cabinet and turned to face them both. For a moment, I considered telling them everything right then, watching their expressions change from concern to shock to whatever would come after. But something held me back. Maybe I wanted the news to come with official documentation. Maybe I wanted just one more night of being the person they thought I was before becoming someone new in their eyes. Or maybe I simply wanted to savor it myself first, before it became public property. I should get going, I said instead. It's getting late. My mother frowned. You're welcome to stay in your old room. It's a long drive back to your place. Thanks, but I have an early meeting tomorrow. Another exchange of glances between them. Another unspoken conversation about their wayward daughter and her imaginary career. On a Saturday? My father asked skeptically. Startup life, I replied with a shrug. No weekends in tech. He nodded, clearly not believing me, but too tired to press further. At the door, my mother hugged me tightly. We just want you to be happy, she whispered. I know, Mom, I said, and meant it. I am happy. But secure, my father added. Happy and secure. I smiled. I'm working on it. The drive back to my apartment was surreal. The same route I'd taken hundreds of times suddenly felt different, as if the familiar streets should somehow reflect the seismic shift in my reality. But everything looked exactly the same. The late-night taco trucks, the university students, walking in laughing groups, the homeless man on the corner who always waved at passing cars. The world hadn't changed. Only my place in it. My neighborhood was indeed flooded again. Not dangerously so, but enough that I had to navigate carefully around pools of standing water in the parking lot. The irony wasn't lost on me. By this time tomorrow, I could buy the entire apartment complex if I wanted to. But tonight, I still had to step carefully around puddles in worn-out sneakers. Inside, my apartment told the story of the last 3 years. The futon sofa I'd found on Craigslist, the desk made from an old door and 2 filing cabinets, the walls covered in whiteboards filled with code and linguistic models and flowcharts connecting ideas that only made sense to me and my team. Not exactly the picture of success my family envisioned, but it had been enough. It had been what I needed to build something real. I kicked off my shoes and sank onto the futon, finally allowing myself to fully absorb the magnitude of what had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. I'm not sleeping tonight. Too excited. Call if you want to freak out together. I smiled, but didn't call. Some moments needed solitude. Instead, I opened my laptop and navigated to the secure email that had arrived from Metroform's legal team. There it was in black and white, an offer to acquire LinguaCode Inc. for $500 million, with terms exactly as Sarah had described. My eyes caught on a particular clause. Upon public announcement of the acquisition, founders Elena Santiago and Sarah Chen will be introduced as executive directors of Metroform's new linguistic AI division. Executive Director, a title my father might finally recognize as legitimate. The thought made me pause. When had his approval become the measuring stick for my success? When had any of their opinions become so important that years of dismissal could still sting despite this incredible validation? I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Outside, the floodwater reflected the streetlights in fractured patterns. I thought about what my brother had said. Dad's about to offer you a job at his firm. Again. And Mom's going to back him up. They'd planned an intervention disguised as a celebration dinner. Because they genuinely believed I was failing. Because they couldn't see value in anything that didn't fit their narrow definition of success. And now, overnight, I would become the kind of success they couldn't ignore. The kind that made headlines and turned heads at country clubs. The kind that came with money. The most universally recognized metric of achievement in their world. Would it change how they saw me? Or just how they saw what I had done? The distinction felt important somehow. I didn't sleep much that night. How could I? My mind raced with possibilities, with plans, with the 100 details that would need attention in the coming weeks. Around 5 a.m., I gave up trying and made coffee. then settled at my makeshift desk to draft an email to our small team. 14 people who had believed in the vision enough to work for equity and below-market salaries. 14 people who were about to become millionaires. The responsibility of it was humbling. We weren't just selling technology, we were selling years of collective faith and sacrifice. I wanted to get the message right. By 8 a.m., I'd sent the email calling an all-hands emergency meeting at our office for 10 a.m. By 9, I was showered and dressed in my best attempt at looking like someone worth $500 million. Dark jeans, a decent blouse, the one pair of non-scuffed boots I owned. Sarah was already at the office when I arrived, pacing the small conference room we shared with 3 other startups in the incubator space. "I didn't sleep at all," she announced as I walked in. "Not 1 minute. I tried meditation. I tried counting. Sheep. I tried bourbon. Nothing worked." I laughed. "You look remarkably good for someone running on fumes and bourbon." "Adrenaline is better than sleep," she replied, then stopped pacing to really look at me. "How are you so calm? We're about to tell the team they're all rich. We're about to tell the world we built something worth $500 million. Aren't you freaking out even a little?" "Trust me, I'm freaking out internally," I assured her. "I just process differently." She rolled her eyes. "Right, the eternal calm of Elena Santiago. Nothing ruffles you." If only she knew how untrue that was. How last night's dinner had left familiar bruises on my confidence despite everything we'd achieved. How part of me was already anticipating my family's reaction. Not just with excitement, but with a complicated mix of vindication and lingering hurt. "Did you read all the terms?" I asked, changing the subject. She nodded. "Twice. Then I had my cousin, who's a contract lawyer, read them. It's solid, Elena. They're offering exactly what we asked for and more." "The team keeps their jobs? Everyone?" "Everyone. With retention bonuses and accelerated vesting. They're not just buying the tech. They're buying us. All of us." Relief washed over me. That had been my biggest concern. That our people would be cast aside once the technology changed hands. But Metroform understood that the real value was in the minds that had created the algorithm, not just the code itself. "Then I think we're really doing this," I said softly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "We're really doing this." The team began arriving shortly after, confusion evident on their faces. Emergency meetings weren't common at Lingua Code, and certainly not on Saturday mornings. Raj, our lead developer, arrived first. "What's going on? Is everything okay? Are we shut down?" Always assuming the worst. But given the startup landscape, his fears weren't unfounded. For every success story, there were 100 companies that imploded overnight. "Everything's fine," I assured him. "Better than fine. But let's wait for everyone to get here." By 10:15, all 14 team members were crammed into our small conference room, perched on every available surface. Junior developers on the windowsill, UX designers sharing the one couch, our operations manager leaning against the whiteboard. Sarah closed the door and gave me a nod. This was it. "Thank you all for coming in on a Saturday," I began. "I know this is unusual, but we have news that couldn't wait until Monday." Nervous glances were exchanged. Startup employees know that unexpected announcements rarely bring good news. For the past 3 years, we've been building something that most people said couldn't exist, I continued. A system that truly understands the nuances of human language, not just the words themselves, but the meaning behind them. The emotions, the cultural context. Nods around the room. They'd all heard this speech before in various forms. It was our mission statement, our North Star. Yesterday, we received confirmation that Metroform wants to acquire Lingua Code. A beat of silence, then eruption. "What? The Metroform? Are you serious? Oh my God, are we all fired?" I held up my hands, waiting for the chaos to settle. No one is getting fired. In fact, part of the deal is that everyone keeps their positions, with retention bonuses and accelerated vesting schedules. More commotion. Sarah stepped forward. The offer is for $500 million. That means everyone with equity, which is all of you, will be receiving significant payouts once the deal closes. The room went silent again, but different this time. The silence of collective shock. Maya, one of our junior developers who had joined straight out of college, spoke first. How significant? I smiled. Based on your current equity stake, Maya, approximately $3 million. Her hand flew to her mouth. That's more than my parents' house. Around the room, similar realizations were dawning as people did quick mental calculations of their equity percentages. Raj shook his head in disbelief. I turned down Google to join a company no one had heard of, because I believed in this wild idea about teaching machines to understand Shakespeare. My parents thought I was insane. Mine too, echoed Priya, our lead linguist. My father actually staged an intervention last year, tried to get me to apply to law school as a backup plan. I felt a jolt of recognition. Seems to be a popular parental tactic. For the next hour, we discussed details, answered questions, shared collective disbelief, and finally began to celebrate. Someone ordered champagne. Someone else suggested breakfast tacos. By noon, our tiny office had transformed into an impromptu party as the reality sank in. We had done the impossible. We had built something valuable enough that one of the world's largest tech companies wanted to buy it for more money than most of us had ever imagined possessing. In the midst of the celebration, I slipped away to the small closet that served as my private office. I needed a moment to breathe, to center myself before the whirlwind that was about to begin. My phone had been buzzing incessantly, mostly congratulatory texts from Sarah's cousin who had reviewed the contract, and a few messages from friends who somehow already sensed something was happening. News traveled fast in the tech community, and although the acquisition wasn't public yet, rumors were clearly beginning to circulate. But no messages from my family. Not that I expected any. They had no way of knowing yet. The official press release wouldn't go out until Monday morning. I sat at my desk, looking at the framed piece of paper on the wall, my diploma from Reed College, double major in comparative literature and linguistics and computer science. The worthless degree that had laid the foundation for everything we'd built. I traced the embossed letters with my fingertip, remembering the day I'd received it. How my parents had attended the ceremony out of obligation but couldn't hide their disappointment when my classmates announced prestigious graduate school acceptances or corporate job offers, while I spoke of language models and natural processing, algorithms. It's a phase, my mother had whispered to a fellow parent. She'll find her way eventually. I had found my way. It just wasn't the path they recognized. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Priya. Sorry to interrupt your moment of zen, she said with a smile. But I wanted to say something privately. Of course, come in. I gestured to the only other chair in the tiny space. She sat, suddenly looking serious. When I joined LinguaCode 2 years ago, I had just been rejected from 10 different PhD programs. My thesis on computational modeling of semantic drift was considered too interdisciplinary, not linguistic. Enough for the linguistics departments, not technical enough for the computer science departments. I nodded. I'd heard parts of this story during her interview, which was precisely why I'd hired her. My parents were devastated, she continued. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't just pick one field and excel in it the traditional way. Why I insisted on straddling disciplines that didn't seem to fit together. The parallels to my own experience were uncanny. The day you hired me, you said something I've never forgotten. You said, the most valuable innovations happen at the intersection of disciplines that aren't supposed to talk to each other. That changed everything for me. It made me feel like my approach wasn't wrong. It was just ahead of its time. I smiled, remembering that conversation. It's still true. I know, she said. And now we have $500 million to prove it. She paused. I called my parents right after the announcement. My father cried, Elena. Actually cried, and then he said, I'm sorry I didn't understand what you were building. Something caught in my throat. That must have felt good to hear. It did, she admitted. But also, it made me realize that I stopped needing his understanding a long time ago. Somewhere along the way, his approval stopped being the metric I used to measure my choices. Her words hit me with unexpected force. Had I reached that point with my own family? Had I truly stopped measuring my worth through their eyes? Or was I still, somewhere deep down, seeking the validation I'd been denied for so long? Anyway, Priya continued, oblivious to my internal revelation, I just wanted to say thank you. For seeing something in me that traditional institutions missed. For building a company where people like us, the ones who color outside the lines, can thrive. Thank you for taking a chance on a startup no one had heard of, I replied. For believing in the vision when it was just whiteboards and late-night coding sessions. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Are you going to call your family about the acquisition? I hesitated. Eventually, after the public announcement, probably. I get it, she said with a knowing look. Sometimes you need to process these things on your own terms. After she left, I sat with her question. Why hadn't I immediately called my family with the news? Was it because I wanted the validation of the public announcement first? Because I wanted to approach them from a position of undeniable success rather than having to convince them that the offer was real? Or was it because, as Priya had suggested, I needed to process this monumental shift on my own terms before navigating their reactions? I thought about my father's paralegal offer, my mother's concerned looks, my brother's well-intentioned but condescending advice. How differently they would see me come Monday morning when the press release hit and my name appeared, alongside words like visionary and innovative leader and 500 million acquisition. The thought both satisfied and unsettled me. My phone buzzed again. Sarah texting from the main room. You okay in there? People are asking for a speech from the founder. I texted back, coming. Before I left the small office, I took one more look at the diploma on the wall. The worthless degree that had just proven its value beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Then I squared my shoulders and went to address my team. The people who had believed in the vision when it was just that. A vision. Not a valuation. Have you ever noticed how success changes not just how others see you, but how you see yourself? How validation from the world can suddenly make you question why you ever needed validation at all? I was about to find out just how profoundly those dynamics could shift, not just with my family, but within my own sense of self. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Lawyers and accountants were called. Documents were reviewed. Plans were made for Monday's announcement. Through it all, my phone remained conspicuously silent of family calls, not because they were ignoring me, but because they still had no idea that their wayward daughter was about to become front-page news. Monday morning dawned with unusual clarity for Austin in summer. The sky a perfect blue canvas, almost as if the universe itself recognized the significance of the day. I woke before my alarm, the weight of anticipation making sleep impossible. Past 5 a.m., the official press release was scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. our time, 1 hour that would divide my life into before and after. I dressed with deliberate care, a tailored charcoal blazer I'd splurged on months ago for investor meetings, dark jeans, and the one pair of designer heels I owned. Professional but authentic. Exactly. The image we wanted to project. Not corporate drones who'd sold out, but innovative thinkers who'd found the right partnership to amplify our vision. The press release had been crafted and recrafted a dozen times over the weekend. Each word precisely chosen. Metroform acquires lingua code for 500 million, bringing revolutionary emotional intelligence to AI systems. And lower in the text, the paragraph that would forever change how my family saw me. Founded by Elena Santiago and Sarah Chen, Lingua Code has developed proprietary algorithms that enable AI systems to accurately detect and interpret emotional nuances in human language. Across 27 languages, Santiago, who holds degrees in comparative literature and linguistics and computer science from Reed College, will lead Metroform's new linguistic AI division as executive director. I arrived at our office at 7:15 a.m. to find Sarah already there, immaculately dressed and vibrating with nervous energy. "I've been here since 6, she admitted. "Couldn't stay home. The walls were closing in." I understood completely. "Have you refreshed the Metroform investor page yet?" "Only about 400 times, she replied with a shaky laugh. "Nothing yet." We'd been told the press release would hit the newswires at exactly 9 a.m. Eastern, followed immediately by an update to Metroform's investor relations page. Our own website would redirect to a special announcement page at the same moment. The choreography had been planned with military precision. Gradually, our team members began to arrive, earlier than usual, all clearly too excited to follow normal. Working hours. By 7:45, nearly everyone was present, clustered around the conference room table with laptops open, refreshing various news sites and financial tickers. The silence grew heavier as 8 a.m. approached. 7:55, 7:58, 7:59. 10 seconds, Raj announced, watching the clock on his computer. We counted down together, a strange mixture of New Year's Eve excitement and wedding day nerves. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. For a moment, nothing happened. The internet continued existing as it had before, unaware of our anticipation. Then Priya gasped, "It's up! Metroform's homepage!" We clustered around her screen. There, it was, our company logo alongside Metroform's, with the headline announcing the acquisition, and below it, my name, alongside Sarah's, as the visionaries behind the technology. The room erupted. Cheers, hugs, a few tears. Someone popped a champagne bottle despite the early hour. Maya actually jumped onto a chair and let out a whoop that probably violated noise ordinances. In the midst of the celebration, my phone began to vibrate. Continuously, like it might actually shake itself off the table. I picked it up to see notifications flooding in. LinkedIn, 47 new notifications. Twitter, 83 mentions. Email, 164 new messages. Text messages, 24 unread. And then, appearing. Among them, like visitors from another dimension. Messages from my family. Mom, "Elena, please call me immediately." Dad, "What is this about Metroform? Is this real?" Marco, "What the actual wow? Call me!" Aunt Sophia, "Elena, dear, CNN just mentioned your name. Your name, on CNN." Cousin Devin, "Holy shit. Holy shit. You're a genius and I'm an idiot." The messages kept coming, flooding in faster than I could read them. My phone actually froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of attention from people who had spent years politely tolerating my career choices. Sarah appeared at my elbow, her own phone similarly exploding with notifications. "I think the word is out," she said with remarkable understatement. I laughed, a sound bordering on hysteria. "You could say that." "Are you going to call your family?" I glanced at the increasingly desperate messages from my mother. "Not yet. Let's enjoy this moment with the people who believed in us when it wasn't a headline." She squeezed my arm in understanding. "The real ones." The next hour passed in a chaotic blur. Champagne was consumed, speeches were given, photos were taken. Through it all, my phone continued its relentless vibration, my family's messages growing increasingly urgent. Mom, Elena, please, we're worried. Is this real? 500 million? Please call us. Dad, your mother is very upset. Call home immediately. Marco. If you don't call back in the next hour, I'm driving to your apartment. It was Lucia, my 9-year-old niece, who finally broke through. Lucia. Aunt Elena, my dad says you're super rich now. Can you still make cookies? Also, did you buy a house that doesn't flood yet? Her message, so innocent and direct amid the panic and confusion of the adults, made me laugh out loud. I texted back immediately. Still planning to make cookies? No. New house yet, but taking suggestions. Love you, Lucia. She responded with a string of emojis that somehow perfectly captured the surreal nature of the day. Around 10 a.m., as the initial shock began to settle, my phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call from my father. I stared at his name on the screen, suddenly uncertain. This was the moment I'd been unconsciously rehearsing for years. The conversation where they finally understood that my path had been valid all along. So why was I hesitating? I stepped into my small office and closed the door before answering. Hi, Dad. Elena. His voice sounded strange, tight, almost strangled. Is it true? What they're saying on the business channels? Yes, I said simply. It's true. A long pause. $500 million? Yes. For your language algorithm thing? I couldn't help but smile at his description. For our computational linguistics platform, yes. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, something I never expected to hear from my stoic, always certain father. His voice breaking. I don't understand, he said, the words coming slowly. Why didn't you tell us? At dinner. When I offered you the paralegal job. Why didn't you say something? The question caught me off guard. Of all the things he could have asked, how the deal happened, what it meant for my future, what I planned to do with the money, he wanted to know why I hadn't told them. It wasn't finalized yet, I said, which was true, but not the whole truth. We couldn't discuss it until the official announcement. But you knew, he pressed. Friday night, when we said those things about your career. You already knew, didn't you? I hesitated. I had received the initial offer, yes. His breathing was audible through the phone. You let us sit there and critique your life choices. Offer you entry-level jobs, talk about intervention, and all along I was building something valuable, I finished for him. Yes. The silence that followed felt laden with realization, not just his, but my own. I hadn't told them because some part of me had wanted exactly this moment, the stark contrast between their dismissal and the world's validation. I had wanted them to fully experience the magnitude of how wrong they had been. The recognition wasn't entirely comfortable. We're coming over, he announced suddenly. Your mother and I. We need to see you. Dad, today is incredibly busy. The announcement just happened and… Elena. Something in his voice stopped me. Not authority, as it would have been in the past, but something else. Something like respect, or possibly even fear. Please, we need to see you. To apologize in person. The word apologize from my father, a man who considered admitting error a sign of weakness, was so unexpected that I found myself agreeing before I could think better of it. Fine. But not at my apartment. I'll meet you at the office. Your office, he repeated, as if the concept had suddenly taken on new meaning. Text us the address. We'll be there in an hour. After he hung up, I sat motionless, trying to process what had just happened. My father, the man who had spent years subtly and not so subtly undermining my career choices, was coming to my office, not to rescue me from failure, but to apologize for not recognizing my success. The world had indeed turned upside down. When I emerged from my office, the celebration was still in full swing. Someone had ordered an obscene amount of breakfast tacos. Someone else had created a playlist titled, "We're All Rich Beaches Now," that was pumping through portable speakers. Sarah caught my eye across the room and made her way over. "Family?" she asked, nodding at the phone still in my hand. "My parents are coming here, to apologize, apparently." Her eyebrows shot up. Wow, that was fast. Mine are still in the denial and confusion stage. My mother asked if this was one of those internet money scams. I laughed. I think my family has moved directly to bargaining, as in, how quickly can they rebuild the relationship they just realized might be valuable? The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. Sarah studied my face. "You don't seem as vindicated as I expected. Isn't this the I told you so moment you've been waiting for?" I considered her question seriously. I thought it would feel different, more satisfying, I guess. And instead it feels complicated. I struggled to articulate the swirl of emotions. Like, I'm happy they finally see the value in what we've built. But also, you wish they'd seen the value before there was a price tag attached, she finished for me. Exactly, I said, relieved she understood. It feels like they're not actually seeing me or what I built. They're seeing the validation that came from someone else valuing it. Sarah nodded slowly. The difference between being proud of you and being proud to be associated with you. Yes, I exclaimed. That's it exactly. She squeezed my shoulder. Well, get ready, because I suspect your family is about to be very proud to be associated with you. 53 minutes later, my father being pathologically early to everything, the receptionist for our shared incubator space called to say my parents had arrived in the lobby. I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer, and went to meet them. The contrast between Friday night and Monday morning couldn't have been more stark. Gone was my father's slightly dismissive expression, replaced by something almost like awe. My mother, usually poised to the point of rigidity, kept clasping and unclasping her hands, her eyes darting around the startup space as if she might discover the secret to my success hidden in the exposed brick walls or community coffee station. "Elena," she breathed when she saw me, opening her arms for a hug that felt more urgent than usual. "Hi, Mom," I said, allowing the embrace but feeling strangely detached from it. "Dad." He nodded, seemingly unable to find words now that he was face to face with me. The confidence that usually radiated from him, the certainty that he knew best, had evaporated. "Let's go to the conference room," I suggested, leading them through the main workspace where my team was still celebrating. Eyes followed us as we walked, curious glances at the people who had raised the founder suddenly at the center of tech news. I made brief introductions as we passed. "This is Raj, our lead developer, Priya, our head linguist, Maya, junior developer who created our sentiment analysis module." My mother nodded and smiled too brightly at each person, clearly trying to compensate for something, though I wasn't sure exactly what. My father remained uncharacteristically silent. In the conference room, with the door closed against the noise of celebration, an awkward silence fell. I didn't rush to fill it. Let them find the words, I decided. They were the ones who had asked for this meeting. Finally, my mother spoke. "Elena, why didn't you tell us? All this time, whenever we asked about your work, you were so vague." I considered deflecting again with the official explanation about confidentiality before announcements. But something in her expression, genuine confusion tinged with hurt, made me opt for honesty instead. "Because you weren't interested," I said simply. "You asked about my work the way you'd ask about a hobby or a phase, something to be tolerated, until I found a real career. So eventually I stopped trying to make you understand." My bluntness seemed to physically affect her. She actually winced. "That's not true," she protested, but weakly. "We always supported you." "No," I corrected gently. "You always loved me. That's different from supporting my choices." My father cleared his throat. "We were worried about you, about your future." "I know," I acknowledged, "but worry isn't the same as respect. You never respected that I might actually know what I was doing." He looked down at his hands, an uncharacteristic gesture of submission. "Clearly, you did." The words hung in the air between us, the closest to an apology I'd ever received. From him. My mother reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching mine. "We're so proud of you, Elena. So proud." The words I'd waited years to hear, and yet. "Today," I said. "You're proud of me today. But I'm the same person I was on Friday night when you were planning an intervention. I've built the same company, created the same technology. The only difference is that now someone with money has validated what I've been doing all along." My father looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "If I had told you Friday night that we were about to be acquired for $500 million, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought it was another one of my impractical dreams?" His silence was answer enough. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were wrong," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We were so wrong about everything." Her vulnerability cracked something open in me, the hard shell of defensiveness I'd built around this moment. "Not everything," I said more gently. "You were right to want security for me, to worry about my future. That's what parents do." "But we should have trusted you more," my father said, finally meeting my eyes directly. "Should have seen that you were building something real, even if it didn't look like success to us." I nodded, acknowledging the concession. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I needed to do this without your approval first. I needed to know I could trust my own judgment, even when everyone around me doubted it." "And now?" my mother asked. "Now that everyone knows you were right all along?" I considered her question carefully. Now I realize that the validation I thought I wanted doesn't actually matter as much as I expected. The work itself, that's what mattered all along. Creating something meaningful, regardless of whether anyone else saw its value yet. My father nodded slowly, as if genuinely trying to understand this perspective so foreign to his metric-driven worldview. "Your brother is having a complete meltdown, by the way," my mother said, a hint of her normal pragmatism returning. "He's convinced you're going to buy a yacht just to spite him." I laughed, the tension in the room finally breaking. "No yachts, but I might invest in some flood prevention for my neighborhood." We talked for another hour, about the acquisition, about what it meant for my future, about the practical aspects of suddenly having more money than I knew what to do with. Throughout the conversation, I could sense them struggling to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the successful entrepreneur sitting across from them. They were trying, genuinely trying, to see me with new eyes. It was a start. As they prepared to leave, my father hesitated at the door. "Elena, I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "The LLC, the one I used for John's grant application, is that connected to all this?" I'd almost forgotten about his casual admission of identity theft at Friday's dinner. "No, Dad, that was just a shell company I set up years ago for some freelance work. It's not connected to Lingua Code." Relief washed over his face. "Good. That's good. Because I wouldn't want to have compromised anything with what I did, which was wrong. I see that now." Another unprecedented admission. "We'll need to sort that out," I said. "But it's a separate issue." He nodded, then surprised me by pulling me into an awkward hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for not seeing what was right in front of me." The simple sincerity of it touched me more deeply than I expected. "Thank you," I managed to say. After they left, I returned to the main workspace where the celebration had evolved into impromptu planning sessions, people clustering around whiteboards, mapping out dreams and possibilities now that financial constraints had been lifted. Sarah found me by the coffee machine. "How did it go with the parents?" "Surprisingly well," I admitted. "They actually apologized." "The power of $500 million, she quipped, but without malice. "It shouldn't take that," I said. "Recognition shouldn't require external validation." "No," she agreed. "But sometimes that's what it takes for people to question their assumptions. The important thing is that they're questioning them now." I considered this. "I guess you're right." "Of course I am," she said with exaggerated confidence. "I'm a visionary technology leader. It says so in the press release." I laughed, grateful for her ability to cut through the emotional complexity with humor. "Your phone is still blowing up, by the way," she noted, nodding toward where my phone was vibrating its way across a nearby desk. "The family apology tour continues?" I checked the screen to find a text from my Aunt Sophia. "Elena, darling, I always said you were the smart one in the family. Having a little dinner on Saturday to celebrate your incredible achievement. Nothing fancy, just close family and a few friends, including my bridge partner whose son works at the Times. Thought you might enjoy meeting him for a potential profile? Let me know what wine you prefer. So proud." I showed it to Sarah, who snorted. "Nothing says sincere support like trying to leverage your success before the ink is dry on the press release." To be fair, she did always say I was smart, I conceded. Just in the "what a shame she's wasting it" kind of way. "Are you going to go?" I thought about it. Probably, but not because I need their approval anymore. Why then? Because success doesn't mean cutting people off when they finally come around. It means having the generosity to allow them to evolve their understanding, even if it took longer than it should have. Sarah considered this. That's either very enlightened or setting yourself up for more disappointment. Maybe both, I admitted. But I'd rather give people the chance to do better than hold their past judgments against them forever. Especially family. Even after years of dismissing your work? Even then, I smiled. Besides, success is the best revenge, right? Speaking of success, she gestured toward the entrance where a film crew was setting up. Channel 8 News is here for that interview we scheduled. Ready to tell the world about the worthless degree that just changed the future of AI? I straightened my blazer and nodded. Absolutely. As I walked toward the waiting cameras, my phone buzzed one more time. A text from Lucia. "Dad says we're coming to Aunt Sophia's party for you on Saturday. Can you teach me how to make robots? Understand feelings? I want to make one that knows when my teacher is in a bad mood." I smiled and quickly typed back. "It's a date. Bring your notebook. First lesson in computational linguistics starts Saturday." Have you ever noticed that true validation doesn't come from proving others wrong, but from finally, fully believing you were right? That's the lesson I was learning. Not in the headlines or the acquisition offer, or even in my family's belated recognition, but in the quiet certainty that had been growing inside me all along. The certainty that I'd seen a path others couldn't, yet imagine, and had the courage to follow it anyway. The week that followed the announcement was unlike anything I could have imagined. My calendar transformed overnight from the typical startup grind of investor meetings and development sprints to a whirlwind of press interviews, congratulatory calls, and strategic planning sessions with Metroform executives. My inbox overflowed, with messages from former classmates, distant relatives, and strangers all claiming some tenuous connection. "Always knew you were destined for greatness," wrote a professor who had once suggested I choose between computer science and linguistics because Straddling disciplines rarely leads to excellence in either. Remember me from sophomore year? Spanish? Began an email from someone I had no recollection of ever meeting. The most surprising message came from my high school guidance counselor, the same woman who had tried to dissuade me from applying to Reed College because it was too experimental and not practical enough for someone with your test scores. Dear Elena, she wrote, I'm sure you don't remember me, but I've been following your incredible success with such pride. I always tell my current students about you as an example of following your unique path. I showed that one to Sarah, who laughed until she nearly choked on her coffee. Revisionist history at its finest, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Next thing you know, your family will have always believed in you from day one. She wasn't far off. By Wednesday, my brother Marco had revised his narrative so thoroughly that he now claimed to have been my biggest supporter during those early struggling years. He'd appeared at my office unannounced, designer sunglasses pushed up on his head, looking around at our modest workspace with newfound appreciation. I always told Dad you were onto something big, he said, examining the whiteboards covered in linguistic models and code snippets as if they were profound works of art. He'd always understood. He just couldn't see it, Traditional mindset and all that. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, allowing him this reinvention. What purpose would it serve to remind him of his actual words? Of the times he'd referred to my work as my little hobby, or suggested I was hiding from adult responsibility by starting a company instead of joining an established firm? Lucia is beyond excited for Saturday, he continued, referring to my Aunt Sophia's hastily arranged celebration dinner. She's been telling everyone at school that her aunt is a computer language billionaire. I winced. Please tell her. I'm not a billionaire. The company sold for $500 million, but that's split among investors and the team. And it's not all cash up front. He waved dismissively. Details. The point is, you made it. You proved everyone wrong. That phrase again, proving everyone wrong. Why did people assume that had been my motivation, that I'd spent years building? Something innovative just to say, I told you so to doubters? I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong, Marco, I said carefully. I built LinguaCode because I genuinely believed in the technology and its potential to change how humans and machines communicate. He gave me a knowing look. Sure. But you have to admit, it feels pretty great to show up all the naysayers, to have them eating their words now. Before I could respond, my phone rang. The Metroform CEO's office calling about an upcoming board presentation. Marco took the hint and left with a quick hug and a promise to catch up properly at Saturday's dinner. After he departed, I sat at my desk feeling strangely unsettled. Why wasn't I more satisfied by the dramatic reversal in how my family viewed me? Wasn't this exactly the scenario I'd fantasized about during all those dismissive family dinners? The moment when they'd finally recognized the value of the path I'd chosen? Yet, instead of triumph, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly, but also a lingering sadness for the years of support I'd missed, and an unexpected emptiness where the drive to prove myself had previously lived. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Darling, what are you wearing to Sophia's dinner? She's gone all out, hired a photographer, invited half the country club. I was thinking we could coordinate outfits, maybe go shopping tomorrow. I stared at the message, trying to reconcile this eager, fashion-conscious mother with the woman who, just last week, couldn't hide her disappointment in my career choices. The whiplash was dizzying. Before I could respond, another text arrived, this one from my father. Elena, need your thoughts on some investment opportunities. My broker has suggestions for your new situation. Let's discuss before Saturday. I set the phone down without replying to either message. They weren't bad people, I knew that. They genuinely loved me and wanted what they believed was best for me. But their sudden pivot from intervention planning to celebration hosting left me feeling like they were relating not to me, but to the success I now represented. Thursday brought a new development, my first actual hate mail. an anonymous email, through the company website. Another example of style over substance. Your algorithm is just repackaged linguistics theories with fancy marketing. The tech community has lost its mind paying $500 million for smoke and mirrors. Enjoy the bubble while it lasts. I forwarded it to Sarah with a simple, well, that didn't take long. She appeared in my office doorway minutes later. "Welcome to the big leagues," she said. "You're not really successful until someone accuses you of being a fraud." I laughed despite myself. Is that the metric? Not the acquisition price or the press coverage, but hate mail? Absolutely, she confirmed with mock seriousness. When people you've never met take time out of their day to tell you why you don't deserve your success, that's when you know you've truly arrived. Her perspective helped. Sarah had a way of cutting through emotion to find the humor in almost any situation. Speaking of arriving, she continued, have you decided what you're going to do? With your share, I mean. It was the question everyone had been asking since the announcement, and the one I felt least equipped to answer. What does one do with sudden wealth after years of bootstrapping and ramen dinners? I'm still figuring it out, I admitted. Pay off my student loans, obviously. Maybe buy a place that doesn't flood every time it rains. Dream bigger, Elena, she urged. This is life-changing money. That's the problem, I said. It feels too big to be real. Like I'm in a dream I might wake up from at any moment. She nodded in understanding. I felt that way at first, too. But then I realized, this isn't lottery money. We earned this. We built something valuable enough that one of the world's biggest tech companies decided they needed it. Her words resonated. This wasn't random good fortune. It was the result of years of work, of believing in our vision when no one else did, of pushing boundaries and taking risks. The money was simply the market's way of acknowledging the value we'd created. You're right, I said. I think I'm still adjusting to the shift. From being seen as impractical to being hailed as visionary, literally overnight. The funny thing is, nothing about you or your work actually changed, Sarah pointed out. You're the same brilliant, stubborn, boundary-crossing thinker you were last week. The only difference is that now other people can see what I've seen all along. Her words stayed with me throughout the next day as I navigated more press interviews, meetings with the Metroform transition team, and an ever-increasing flood of messages from people emerging from the woodwork to claim connection to my success. By Friday evening, I was emotionally exhausted and dreading the next day's celebration dinner. The thought of being paraded around as Aunt Sophia's suddenly valuable niece made me want to catch the next flight to anywhere else. But I'd made a promise to Lucia about computational linguistics lessons, and that was one commitment I intended to keep. I was just about to leave the office when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Another journalist, probably. But something made me answer. Is this Elena Santiago? A woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Elena. Ms. Santiago, my name is Dr. Imani Williams. I'm the chair of the Computer Science Department at Westlake Community College. Not what I was expecting. How can I help you, Dr. Williams? I read about your work with LinguaCode and the Metroform acquisition, she continued. Your background combining linguistics and computer science caught my attention because we've been developing a new interdisciplinary program here, focusing on AI and human communication. That sounds fascinating, I said, genuinely interested, despite my fatigue. Community colleges were often at the forefront of practical, accessible technology education. We have a request, she said. Our students are primarily first-generation college attendees, many from backgrounds where STEM fields seem inaccessible. Having someone like you, someone who took an unconventional path and succeeded spectacularly, speak to them would be incredibly impactful. I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my strength, and my schedule was already overflowing with post-acquisition obligations. As if sensing my reluctance, Dr. Williams continued, I understand you must be incredibly busy right now. But even a virtual session would mean the world to our students, especially our young women in the program. They rarely see people who look like them succeeding in tech, let alone founding companies acquired for $500 million. Her words cut through my exhaustion. I thought about my own journey, how different it might have been if I'd had visible role models who validated my interdisciplinary approach. If someone had told me that straddling linguistics and computer science wasn't impractical but visionary. I'd be happy to speak with your students, I heard myself saying. Let's find a date that works. The gratitude in her response was palpable. After we arranged a tentative date for the following month, she added, One more thing, Ms. Santiago. Would you be open to helping us establish a small scholarship for students pursuing interdisciplinary tech studies? Nothing major, just enough to help 1 or 2 students each year with books and supplies. The request crystallized something that had been forming in my mind all week. What if the most meaningful use of my newfound resources wasn't buying luxury items or even securing my own future, but creating opportunities for others following unconventional paths? Actually, I said, I'd like to do more than that. Let me think about a more comprehensive program and get back to you next week. After we hung up, I sat at my desk with a clarity I hadn't felt since the acquisition announcement. For the first time, I began to see my sudden wealth not just as validation or security, but as responsibility, a means to create the support systems I'd wished for during my own journey. I opened my laptop and began to type, outlining what would eventually become the Crossroads Initiative, a foundation supporting students and entrepreneurs working at the intersection of traditionally separate fields. By the time I finished, it was well past midnight, but I felt more energized than I had all week. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonable coolness, a rare break in the Texas summer heat. I took it as a good omen as I prepared for Aunt Sophia's dinner. I chose my outfit carefully, not the designer dress my mother had texted about 3 more times, but a simple jumpsuit in deep blue that felt authentic to who I was, acquisition or no acquisition. I arrived at my aunt's sprawling house in West Lake Hills intentionally early. The catering staff was still setting up, arranging flowers and positioning serving platters in the massive open-concept kitchen. My aunt fluttered around in a designer dress, directing the placement of everything from champagne flutes to name cards. "Elena," she exclaimed when she spotted me. "You're early. I'm not even dressed properly yet." "Sorry, I wanted to get here before the crowd," I explained. "Is Lucia here already?" "In the game room with her cousins," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the house. "But darling, I was hoping we could chat about the evening's agenda. I thought you might say a few words. Nothing formal, just a little speech about your journey and success. The Andersons are coming. He's the managing partner at Westlake Venture Capital, you know. And I thought it would be lovely if you could mention." I let her words wash over me, nodding at appropriate intervals while scanning the room. Already I could see the celebration had morphed from family dinner to networking event. Name cards at the elaborately set dining table confirmed my suspicion. I was seated between a banking executive and the venture capitalist, while actual family members were dispersed strategically among potential connections. "Haas and the photographer will arrive at 6, my aunt was saying. "I thought we'd do family photos first, then some of just you for the society page." "Society page?" I interrupted, unable to hide my dismay. "Of course, darling. Local woman's. Tech company sells for $500 million. It's the story of the year." The Elena of last week might have acquiesced, might have gone along with being paraded as Aunt Sophia's suddenly valuable connection. But something had shifted in me over the past few days. "Aunt Sophia," I said gently but firmly, "I appreciate the celebration, but I'm not comfortable with media at what I thought was a family dinner. And I won't be making any investment or partnership decisions tonight, so perhaps seating me between financial advisors isn't the best arrangement." Her expression flickered between surprise and calculation. But Elena, these connections could be valuable for your next venture. I have all the connections I need, I assured her. Tonight, I'd just like to celebrate with family. Speaking of which, I promised Lucia a lesson in computational linguistics, so if you'll excuse me. I left her sputtering and made my way to the game room, where I found Lucia and two younger cousins playing an elaborate board game of her own design, complete with hand-drawn cards and rules that seemed to change every few minutes. "Aunt Elena!" she exclaimed, abandoning the game to throw her arms around me. "Did you bring robot feelings?" I laughed, lifting her in a hug. "No robots today, but I did bring this." I pulled a small package from my bag, a beginner's coding kit designed for children. Ready to learn how computers understand language? Her eyes widened. "Can we do it now, before all the boring grown-ups come?" That's exactly what I was thinking. We found a quiet corner in my uncle's study, away from the increasing bustle of party preparations. For the next hour, I guided Lucia through basic concepts of computational linguistics, translating complex ideas into 9-year-old appropriate explanations. Her questions were insightful, her enthusiasm infectious. "So the computer doesn't really understand feelings," she said, processing what I'd explained. "It just recognizes patterns that usually mean certain feelings." "Exactly," I confirmed, impressed by her grasp of the concept. "It's pattern recognition, not true understanding, at least not yet." She considered this seriously. "But your company made it better at recognizing the patterns? So it seems like it understands?" "That's right. We created algorithms, special instructions, that help computers recognize emotional patterns in language that they couldn't see before." "And that's worth $500 million? She asked, the number clearly too large for her to fully comprehend. I smiled. "Apparently so." "Is that why everyone's being so nice to you now? Because you have money?" The directness of her question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Dad says we have to be extra nice to you now because you're important. But I thought you were always important. You're the only one who explains things to me like I'm smart." Out of the mouths of babes. "Money doesn't make people important, Lucia. What matters is how you treat others and what you create in the world." She nodded, accepting this wisdom easily. "That's what I thought. Dad's just being weird." I laughed. "Adults can be weird sometimes, especially about money." "Are you going to be weird too now that you have money?" I considered her question seriously. "I'm trying not to be. That's why I wanted to teach you about computational linguistics instead of talking to all the important people downstairs." She beamed. "Good. Because I want to make computers understand feelings too someday, and I need you to not be weird so you can teach me." "Deal," I said, offering my hand solemnly. "I promise to never be too weird to teach you." We shook on it, a contract more meaningful than any acquisition agreement. Eventually, the sounds of arriving guests pulled us from our lesson. Lucia sighed dramatically. "I guess we have to go be social now." "Afraid so," I agreed. "But we'll continue this another day, I promise." As we descended the stairs, I was struck by the transformation of my aunt's home. What had been described as an intimate family dinner had morphed into a full-scale society event. At least 50 people milled around the expansive living area, many of whom I'd never seen before. A photographer circulated, capturing candid shots. A string quartet played in the corner. My mother spotted us immediately, rushing over in a designer dress that still had the price tag tucked inside the sleeve, visible when she reached to embrace me. "Elena, darling, where have you been? There are so many people waiting to meet you." "I was keeping a promise to Lucia," I said, smiling at my niece who nodded seriously. "We were doing computational linguistics," Lucia announced proudly, pronouncing each syllable with care. My mother's smile flickered. "How educational." "But sweetheart, the Wilsons are here," They have that lovely son who just finished his MBA at Wharton. Some things never change, acquisition or no acquisition. Mom, I said gently, I'm not interested in being set up right now. I'm in the middle of a major business transition. Of course, she backpedaled quickly. I just thought, well, it never hurts to network. I noticed she'd adopted startup terminology overnight, another sign of how quickly narratives could shift. Last week, my work was a hobby. This week, it was networking. The next 2 hours were a blur of introductions, congratulations, and increasingly transparent attempts to leverage my newfound status. Former classmates who'd never returned my calls suddenly remembered our special connection. Distant relatives hinted at business ventures needing funding. Even my father's golf buddies produced children and nephews with brilliant startup ideas who just needed 5 minutes of my time. Through it all, I maintained a polite smile and deflected with practiced responses. Still figuring out next steps. Taking some time to process before making new commitments. Happy to have your contact information for future reference. It was exhausting, this new form of social currency I'd acquired overnight. Not just the money itself, but the perception of influence, of being someone who could open doors and create opportunities. Midway through the evening, during a rare moment alone by the drinks table, my cousin Devin appeared at my side. Quite the circus, huh? He said, nodding toward where Aunt Sophia was practically shoving her neighbor's son in my direction. I laughed. That's one word for it. Listen, he said, his tone shifting to something more genuine. I wanted to say congratulations. For real. What you've built is incredible, not just the valuation, but the technology itself. I did some reading this week about your approach to semantic processing. It's revolutionary. I studied his face, surprised by his apparent sincerity. Thanks, Devin. That actually means a lot. I also wanted to apologize, he continued, for being part of the chorus that questioned your path, for not seeing the vision because it didn't fit the conventional model of success. His words touched something deep, the first apology that felt rooted in genuine understanding rather than embarrassment at having been wrong. We all have different paths, I said. Your MBA from Wharton is still impressive. Just because I took a different route doesn't diminish what you've accomplished, he smiled ruefully. True, but my path was celebrated all along, while yours was questioned until external validation came. That's the difference. His insight struck me as remarkably self-aware. What will you do next? He asked. After the transition period with Metroform? It was the same question everyone had been asking, but coming from Devin, it felt like genuine curiosity rather than an attempt to position for advantage. I'm starting a foundation, I said, realizing as the words left my mouth that I'd made the decision. The Crossroads Initiative, supporting students and entrepreneurs working at the intersection of traditionally separate fields, like I was. Creating the support you wished you'd had, he observed. Exactly. That's actually perfect, he said, using your success to make the path easier for others like you. Before I could respond, my aunt appeared, practically vibrating with excitement. Elena, darling, the photographer wants a family photo by the fountain. And then the Andersons are leaving soon. You simply must speak with Robert before they go. Such connections, darling. I exchanged a knowing glance with Devin before allowing myself to be swept away. The rest of the evening continued in similar fashion, a parade of introductions, thinly veiled investment pitches, and family members suddenly eager to claim close connection to my success. Through it all, I maintained the calm certainty that had been growing within me all week. This was not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new one. The validation that had come with the acquisition wasn't the destination. It was merely confirmation that I'd been on the right path all along, the path that was uniquely mine. As the party finally wound down around midnight, I found myself on the terrace, taking a moment of quiet under the vast Texas sky. My father joined me, too, glasses of whiskey in hand. "Quite a night," he said, offering me one of the glasses. I accepted it with a nod. "Quite a week." We stood in silence for a moment, sipping the expensive liquor. "I keep thinking about what you said at your office," he finally said. "About us loving you, but not supporting your choices. About the difference between worry and respect." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I always thought I was protecting you," he admitted. "Steering you toward safety because the world is hard enough without choosing an unconventional path." "I know," I said softly. "But I see now that what you needed wasn't protection. It was faith. Faith that you could navigate your own path, even if it wasn't one I recognized." The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I'm sorry it took external validation for me to understand the value of what you were building," he continued. "That says more about my limitations than yours." I turned to look at him directly, this man who had shaped so much of my understanding of success and value. For the first time, I saw not just my father, but a person with his own fears and blind spots, doing the best he could with the perspective he had. "Thank you," I said simply. He nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "So, this foundation you mentioned to your mother, the Crossroads Initiative. Tell me about it." And there, under the stars, I outlined my vision for creating pathways, for others like me, those who saw connections between fields others considered separate, who followed intuition over convention, who needed support to bring innovative ideas to life. My father listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions, offering perspectives I hadn't considered, not trying to direct or control, but engaging as an equal, perhaps for the first time. "It's a worthy legacy," he said when I finished. "More meaningful than any yacht or mansion." I smiled. "I might still buy a place that doesn't flood." "Fair enough," he chuckled. Then, more seriously, "I'm proud of you, Elena. Not because of the money or the headlines, but because you stayed true to your vision when it would have been easier to conform. That takes a kind of courage I'm not sure I've ever had." The words I'd waited so long to hear, not just that he was proud, but that he understood what truly deserved pride. "Better late than never?" I offered. "Much better," he agreed. As we clinked glasses under the Texas sky, I realized that the true gift of success wasn't proving doubters wrong or finally gaining approval. It was the freedom to define value on my own terms, and now, the power to create opportunity for others still finding their unique path at the crossroads. Have you ever discovered that what you thought you wanted wasn't what you needed after all? That the validation you sought for so long mattered less than the strength you built while waiting for it? Sometimes the greatest gift of success isn't the achievement itself, but the clarity it brings about what truly matters, and the platform it provides to create the change you wish you'd found along your own journey. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.